The ballroom shimmered with gold lights, laughter, and clinking glasses. I stood beside Ethan, my new husband, feeling like the happiest woman alive, until my father rose for a toast. Mr. Hargrove adjusted his tie, smiled at the crowd, and said, "Be honest, this marriage won't last a year." Gasps filled the room. My heart stopped. Cameras flashed. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. I froze, still holding my champagne glass midair while whispers swept across the tables like wildfire. Dad raised his glass again, smirking. May we not have to attend another divorce party next year. I forced a smile, pretending I hadn't just been humiliated in front of everyone. But inside, I shattered. My hands trembled as I lowered my glass. The band started playing again, but I couldn't hear anything, just the ringing in my ears. Ethan's hand found mine under the table. "Ignore him," he whispered. But how could I? My father had turned my wedding day, my dream, into a public circus. I looked at the man who raised me and realized something cold. My father didn't want me happy. He wanted me broken. After the ceremony, I locked myself in the bridal suite. My white dress suddenly felt heavy, like it was made of stone. My mother knocked gently. "Clara, please don't cause a scene. You know your father, he just speaks without thinking." "Without thinking," I snapped. "He humiliated me in front of everyone." She sighed. "It's done now, don't ruin your night." Her footsteps faded away. A soft knock followed Ethan. "Clara, open up," he said through the door. "We'll prove him wrong." His calm voice made me breathe again. Slowly, I turned the lock, but as I opened the door, I froze. Ethan stood there, phone in hand, reading a text. My eyes caught the message glowing on the screen. It was from my father. "She'll run just like her mother." The air left my lungs. "Why is my father texting you?" Ethan's face turned pale. "It's not what you think." "Then explain." But before he could answer, the band downstairs played our first dance song, a cruel reminder that our perfect night had already fallen apart. I looked at Ethan, my heart twisting. Maybe my father was right. Maybe this marriage was already cracking. The next morning, whispers traveled faster than coffee in the wedding suite. My bridesmaid, Olivia, came rushing in, eyes wide. "Clara, you're not going to believe this." "What now?" I muttered. "Your dad made a bet," she said quietly. "With his business friends. He said your marriage won't last a year and they actually put money on it." The world tilted. "You're joking." I wish I was. I felt dizzy. The humiliation burned hotter than ever. It wasn't just a cruel comment, it was entertainment for him. My happiness was a game. When Ethan walked in, I told him everything. He clenched his fists. "That's disgusting." Tears blurred my eyes. "He turned my love into a bet, Ethan. A public joke." Ethan took my hands. "Then let's make sure he regrets it." But I wasn't sure how. I looked out the window at the shining city skyline, the world still celebrating our wedding. Inside me, something hardened. If my father wanted to see me fail, I'd make sure he choked on his own words. That was the moment I made my vow, not just to love Ethan, but to destroy my father's sick little game. That night, Ethan came to me with a look I'd never seen before, half anger, half excitement. "I have an idea," he said quietly. "Let's play along." "Play along," I frowned. "With what?" "With your dad's bet." I stared at him, confused. "You want to pretend our marriage is falling apart?" He nodded. "We let them think they're right, while we plan something bigger behind the scenes." "Ethan, that's crazy." He leaned closer. "No, it's strategy. Your father built his empire by controlling people. If we make him believe we're weak, he won't see us coming." I crossed my arms, trying to process it. "And what exactly are we building behind the scenes?" Ethan's lips curled into a thin smile. "Proof, the kind that ruins a man." A chill ran through me. The idea scared me, but a darker part of me loved it. Maybe revenge wasn't evil if it came from justice. As we held each other that night, I could feel a storm beginning to form, one that would shake everything my father thought he controlled. 2 weeks later, rumors began to spread. People whispered that Ethan and I were fighting. Photos of us looking distant at events made it worse. My father, of course, was thrilled. At a family dinner, he grinned across the table. "See, darling, some lessons you learn the hard way." I bit my tongue so hard it nearly bled. When I excused myself, I slipped out to the driveway for air. That's when I saw Ethan waiting in the shadows beside his car, holding a brown folder. "What's that?" I asked. He opened it and showed me several printed documents, bank statements, wire transfers, company memos. "Your father's firm," he whispered. "He's laundering money through shell accounts." My heart raced. "Ethan, where did you get this?" He glanced toward the house. "I have a contact in his accounting department. There's more, and it's bad." I looked back at the glowing windows where my father laughed with guests, proud and untouchable. My cracked smile faded completely. For the first time, I saw my father not as my parent, but as my target. That night, I couldn't sleep. Ethan's words replayed in my mind. "He's laundering money." At dawn, I drove to my parents' mansion. The guards were used to me coming and going, so no one questioned it. I walked straight to my father's home office, the one he always kept locked. After searching through drawers, I found one marked Hendrick's accounts. My pulse quickened. Using the spare key hidden under a photo frame, I opened it. Inside were fake invoices, offshore banking papers, and fake company names. But one file stopped me cold: Ethan's father, Michael Cole. My breath caught. Ethan's father. Why would his name be there? I took photos of everything and quietly left before anyone noticed. My heart raced as I got into my car. When I showed Ethan later that night, his face went pale. "My father used to work for him," he whispered, "until he disappeared." My world tilted again. Maybe our wedding wasn't just my father's joke. Maybe it was Ethan's revenge story all along. Ethan sat in silence, staring at the file like it was a ghost. "My father worked for your dad for 15 years, he said quietly. "He was loyal until he found something he shouldn't have." "What happened?" I asked, my voice trembling. "He tried to expose it. Days later, he vanished. Everyone thought he ran away, but I never believed that." I sank into a chair, the truth cutting deep. "So this, our marriage, was it all a plan?" Ethan met my eyes. "At first, yes, I wanted to get close to him, to destroy him from inside his world. But then I met you." Tears stung my eyes. I wanted to hate him, but I couldn't. My heart was already his, tangled in the same web of lies. I whispered, "So my father ruined your family." He nodded, "And now we ruin his empire." The air between us was heavy. The love I once thought was pure was now mixed with secrets, blood, and revenge. Still, I took his hand. Maybe fate didn't bring us together, maybe vengeance did. To ease the tension, I planned a dinner, just family. My father, my mother, Ethan, and his mother, Mrs. Cole. I thought maybe honesty could bring peace. At first, the room felt normal. My father bragged about his company. Ethan's mother stayed quiet. Then, halfway through the meal, she looked straight at my father and said, "You think you buried him, but the truth always digs its way out." The clinking forks froze. My father's smile dropped. "What are you talking about?" he asked coldly. She sipped her wine. "Michael Cole, ring a bell." My mother's hand shook. My father stood up, furious. "This dinner is over." Ethan rose too. "No, it's just getting started." I could barely breathe. Secrets were spilling like wine across the tablecloth, and no one could stop them now. When my father stormed out, my mother followed him, whispering, "What have you done?" Mrs. Cole looked at me and said softly, "Child, you deserve the truth, but the truth might cost you everything." Her words stayed with me all night. The next morning, I was cleaning out my wedding bouquet, now dried and fatting. As I pulled the ribbons apart, I found something strange, a tiny recorder hidden inside. My hands shook as I pressed play. It was a voice, my father's. He got too close, so I took care of it. Cole should have kept quiet. My stomach twisted. Ethan had planted this recorder on my wedding day. When he came home, I confronted him. "You bugged my bouquet. You used our wedding as a trap." He didn't deny it. I had to. Your father never talks unless he thinks no one's listening. So you married me for information, I cried. He stepped closer. I married you for revenge, but somewhere along the line, I fell in love with you. Tears filled my eyes. You expect me to believe that? He nodded slowly. You will when you see what I do next. I didn't know whether to run from him or trust him again. I stayed silent for days, replaying everything. The bet, the lies, the recording. Finally, Ethan said, Clara, listen. We can keep fighting each other or we can take him down together. I stared at him. If we're doing this, we do it my way. No secrets, no games. He nodded. Deal. We sat side by side, building our plan. I'd use my access as his daughter to get close to my father's files. Ethan would handle the evidence trail. For the first time in weeks, we felt like partners, real ones. Still, part of me ached. I'd lost the father I once respected, and the husband I thought I knew. But I had something new, purpose. Ethan, I said softly, what happens if this all goes wrong? He looked at me with that quiet, dangerous calm. Then we make sure we go down together, but your father goes first. For the first time since my wedding, I smiled, not out of happiness, but out of power. To gain my father's trust again, I started visiting his office more often. I told him I wanted to learn about the family business. He smiled proudly, thinking I had finally grown up. Within a week, he made me his personal assistant. Every morning, I brought him coffee and quietly copied files when he wasn't looking. The deeper I went, the uglier it got. Hidden among his reports were government contracts, bribes, and stolen charity funds meant for sick children. I wanted to throw up. This was the man who raised me, who claimed to teach me right from wrong. That night, I showed Ethan the copies. He looked shocked. He's not just greedy, Clara, he's dangerous. But I already knew. I saw it in my father's eyes every time I caught him watching me too closely. He knew I was changing. The next day, he said, You're not my little girl anymore, are you? I smiled. No, Dad, I'm finally your equal. He didn't know it yet, but the game had just shifted in my favor. One night, as I drove home, I noticed a black car following me. I took 3 turns, then 4, it stayed right behind me. My heart raced. I sped into a gas station, pretending to stop for fuel. The car slowed, then disappeared into the night. When I got home, there was a note under my door. Stop digging, or your marriage won't be the only thing that ends. I froze. Ethan wanted to go straight to the police. This has gone too far, he said. But I shook my head. No, if I back down now, he wins. I want him to see it fall apart from my hands. He held my face gently. Then we do it carefully. Promise me that. I nodded, though fear twisted inside me. The next morning, I found my father waiting outside my office building, smiling like nothing was wrong. Morning, sweetheart. Sleep well. His tone was warm, but his eyes said something else, a warning. My father's 60th birthday came 2 weeks later. The mansion was full of powerful men in suits, glasses clinking, fake laughter echoing through the halls. Ethan and I arrived hand in hand, pretending to be the perfect couple. During dinner, my father stood to give a toast. To family, he said loudly, and to lessons learned. Some marriages just teach us faster than others. Laughter followed. My cheeks burned, but I smiled sweetly and handed him his gift, a silver watch. For time well spent, Dad, I said. What he didn't know was that the watch had a micro camera inside. Hours later, while the guests enjoyed dessert, he slipped into his study to sign a few papers. The watch captured everything, him signing off fake contracts and transferring money to offshore accounts. When Ethan checked the footage later that night, he whispered, We've got him. But I couldn't celebrate yet. I looked at my father's face on the screen, proud, confident, untouchable. He still didn't know who was actually winning. The next morning, Ethan's mother came to see me. She looked worried. Clara, she said softly, your husband's deal isn't what you think. What do you mean? I asked. She hesitated. He's been working with someone else. someone who wants your father gone for good. I felt a chill crawl down my spine. That night, after Ethan fell asleep, I opened his laptop. The password was our wedding date, easy. Inside, I found emails, recordings, and a hidden folder labeled Truth. Inside were messages between Ethan and an investigative journalist, all about my father. My hands shook. He'd been planning this long before we even met. When he woke up, I asked quietly, "When were you going to tell me?" His face turned pale. "Clara, it's not what you think." But I didn't want to hear excuses. The man who swore to protect me was just another player in this twisted game. Still, I couldn't walk away. Not yet. I waited until morning. The sun barely rose before I cornered Ethan in the kitchen. "You lied to me," I said, holding up the printed emails. "You've been feeding information to the press." He looked exhausted, his eyes soft. "Clara, I wasn't trying to hurt you. I needed help to clear my father's name." "So you used me." He stepped closer. "No, I fell in love with you, but the truth, it can't wait anymore." My heart hurt, but I couldn't stop now. "Then we finish this together. After that, you and I are done." He nodded slowly, accepting it. Just then, a soft noise came from the hallway. I turned. Standing by the doorway was my father's lawyer, watching us. His face was cold. "I think Mr. Hargrove will want to hear about this." Before I could speak, he turned and walked away. I felt the blood drain from my face. Ethan whispered. He heard everything. And I knew the war had just gone public. The next morning, Ethan was gone. His phone was off. His car was missing. His office looked like it had never been used. No messages, no clues, nothing. I called everyone I could think of, but no one had seen him. Hours later, my phone rang. It was my father. His voice was calm, too calm. "I told you it wouldn't last a year, Clara." "Where is he?" I demanded. He chuckled. "Maybe you should stop asking questions before you end up like his father." My knees went weak. I dropped the phone and sat on the floor, shaking. Had my father done something to Ethan? Was he really capable of that? When I called the police, they said they'd look into it. But I knew they wouldn't touch a man like Mr. Hargrove, not without proof. That night, I sat alone in the dark, staring at our wedding photo. Ethan's smile looked so real. For the first time, I whispered to the picture, "If you're still alive, I'll finish what we started." And if he wasn't, I'd make sure my father never slept peacefully again. 3 days later, a brown package arrived at my doorstep. No sender name. When I saw the handwriting, my breath caught. It was Ethan. Inside was a single USB drive, labeled Hargrove's Fall. There was also a photo, my father shaking hands with a man I recognized from the news, a criminal known for money laundering. A note fell out last. "If you're reading this, I had to disappear. Finish it for both of us." My eyes filled with tears. Ethan wasn't dead. He was hiding. I plugged in the USB. It held files, account records, call logs, and voice clips of my father's shady deals, enough to bury him. But sending this out would destroy everything. The company, the family name, maybe even me. I stared at the screen, whispering, "What would you do, Ethan?" Then I remembered his last words before vanishing. "If I go down, he goes first." I opened my laptop and began typing an anonymous email. By morning, the headlines exploded. Billionaire CEO under federal investigation. Hargrove Industries linked to offshore fraud. Every news channel ran the story. My father's face was everywhere. He stormed into my home that evening, his eyes wild. "What did you do, Clara?" I stood my ground. "Maybe the truth finally caught up with you." He slammed his fist on the table. "You don't know who you're dealing with. You think you can destroy me." I didn't answer. The fear I used to feel around him was gone. That night, I received a message from an unknown number. "You're almost there. Keep pushing." The sender ID was hidden, but deep down, I knew it was Ethan. For the first time in weeks, I felt hope and power. But I also knew my father wouldn't fall quietly. He was a man who built his empire by burying people. And now, I was next on the list. 2 days later, my father's bank accounts were frozen. Investigators surrounded his office. He tried to act innocent on TV, blaming jealous competitors. But behind the scenes, his empire was burning. Then I got another message. "You're almost there. Check the safe house." The address was outside the city, near the woods. I didn't hesitate. When I arrived, I saw a car parked in the shadows. My heart pounded. I opened the door and there he was, Ethan, alive. He looked thinner, rougher, but his eyes still had that fire. "I couldn't risk staying," he said softly. "Your father's people were everywhere." I threw my arms around him, tears falling. For a moment, the world stopped. Then he pulled away, serious. "We're not done yet. There's one last thing we need, proof your father framed mine." And I knew this wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice. Ethan handed me a folder full of letters, photos, and documents. "This shows your father paid to have mine framed for embezzlement, but the signed confession is still missing." "Where is it?" I asked. He took a deep breath. "Inside your father's private vault, the one behind his office wall." My chest tightened. I'd been there 100 times, but never passed that door. "If we can get that letter," Ethan said, "he won't just lose his company, he'll lose his freedom." It sounded impossible. The vault had security codes, guards, and motion sensors, but I couldn't turn back now. "We'll need a distraction," I said quietly. Ethan smiled faintly. "He's hosting a charity gala next week, the perfect cover." That night, as I stared at the ceiling, my heart raced with fear and excitement. The man who once walked me down the aisle would soon watch everything he built crumble by the daughter he underestimated. The night of the gala sparkled with gold lights and fake smiles. My father stood at the center, shaking hands with guests like nothing was wrong. But I knew the truth. He was a man standing on quicksand. I wore a red dress, the one Ethan said made me look brave. He was hidden outside in a van, guiding me through an earpiece. "Remember," he whispered, "when I say go, head to the office." I smiled at my father from across the room. His grin was cold, but proud, like he still believed I was his obedient daughter. When he stepped on stage to make his speech, Ethan's voice came through. "Now." I slipped out quietly, my heels barely touching the marble floor. I reached the office, opened the secret door behind the bookshelf, and there it was, the steel vault. "Code's his anniversary," Ethan said. "Your mom told me once." My fingers shook as I entered it. The door clicked open. Inside were piles of cash, drives, and one sealed envelope marked confession. I smiled, got it. But before I could leave, the office door slammed shut. And my father's voice filled the room. He stood in the doorway, his eyes cold and sharp. "So," he said softly, "you finally chose sides." I froze, the envelope still in my hand. "I should have known," he continued, stepping closer. "You always had your mother's weakness, loyalty." "Truth isn't weakness," I said, trying to sound calm. He laughed. "You think you're clever. That little leak cost me millions, but you have no idea who protects me. You'll go down before I do." I took a step back. "Not this time." Then from my earpiece, Ethan's voice whispered, "Keep him talking." My father frowned. "Who are you listening to?" Before I could answer, the lights flickered, and suddenly, red beams from police flashlights swept the room. "Mr. Hargrove," a deep voice said, "you're under arrest for fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy." He turned toward me, stunned. "You called them." I held up the envelope. "No, he did." Behind the officers, Ethan stepped into view. My father's face went pale. The man he destroyed had come back for justice. Everything happened fast. My father tried to grab the files, but officers held him down. He shouted, cursed, threatened, but no one listened anymore. As they let him out, cameras flashed. Guests gasped. Reporters swarmed the hallway. The mighty Hargrove name crumbled in one night. I followed them outside, where the rain had started to fall. My father turned to me, eyes full of rage and regret. You think you've won, he hissed. Without me, you're nothing. I met his gaze calmly. Without truth, you were already nothing. They pushed him into the police car, and for the first time in my life, he looked small. Ethan slipped his hand into mine. It's over, he whispered. I looked at him, tears mixing with the rain. No, it's just beginning. Because even though justice was served, healing and rebuilding were only starting. The world now knew the truth, but I still had to live with the name he'd stained. And somehow, make it mean something good again. Weeks later, I visited my father in prison. He looked older, thinner, almost broken. When he saw me, he smirked weakly. Come to gloat. No, I said, to tell you something. He leaned back, curious. I forgave you, I whispered, but I'll never forget what you did. His jaw tightened. Forgive me, you destroyed me. No, I said calmly, you destroyed yourself. He slammed his hand on the table, then stopped, realizing the guards were watching. As I stood to leave, he said quietly, You'll regret this, Clara. I turned to him. I already did, for years. When I stepped outside, Ethan was waiting in the car. How did it go? He asked. I smiled faintly. Closure. He nodded. Then let's start again. We drove off, the sun breaking through the clouds. For the first time, the road ahead felt free, no secrets, no shadows, just truth. But deep down, I knew my father's story wasn't over. He still had power and powerful friends. And I could feel it. This peace wouldn't last forever. A year later, on the same date my father cursed our marriage, Ethan and I renewed our vows. This time, it was small, just close friends, soft music, and sunlight streaming through the windows. As Ethan slipped the ring on my finger, he whispered, We made it. I smiled. 1 year down, forever to go. People clapped and laughed, but as I looked around, I saw something that made my heart pause, a white envelope on a chair, addressed to me. Inside was a short note in my father's handwriting. Enjoy your forever, Clara. The game isn't over. My hands trembled, but then Ethan took the letter, tore it in half, and said, Let him play his games. We're done living in his shadow. I looked into his eyes, the man who stood by me when the world fell apart, and I finally believed him. Because for the first time, our story wasn't about revenge or survival. It was about peace. And even if my father still plotted from the dark, I wasn't that scared girl anymore. I was Clara Hargrove, daughter of a fallen king and queen of my own life.